In this video, I'm going to walk you through how I set up my Clip Studio Paint workspace to make anime-style animations. Every single time I post to Instagram or TikTok, I inevitably get comments like, "What app are you using?" or "What art program is that?" And whenever I tell them it's Clip Studio Paint, the usual response to that would be, "Well, I use Clip Studio Paint and I've never seen it set up like that." Or, "I thought it was a completely different app. You've set it up differently." Which makes sense. It doesn't look like the default workspace, does it? But I've set up my CSP workspace on my iPad Pro in a way that helps me create anime-style animations quickly and efficiently, and that's what I'm here to share with you today. Let's get started. Starting off, I would like to say right off the bat that I cannot take credit for the entirety of this workspace layout. I'm basically using a customized version of a CSP workspace asset called Will's Anime Workspace. At the time of recording this, I believe it is still available in the Clip Studio Assets page, so if it's still active, I will leave a link to it down below for people that don't want to do the hard work. Secondly, I will mention that I am left-handed, so what you see on screen will be specific to my needs as a lefty. If your dominant hand is your right hand, I suggest you just flip what I'm doing with my workspace to best suit your needs. And lastly, this layout is not for everyone, and that's okay. If something about the way I do things doesn't work for you, just customize it for yourself. No need to comment that there's better ways of doing things, or this might work easier, or this and that. I'm just providing the structure, and you can change it as much as you want. I mean, heck, I'm doing it myself for Will's Anime Workspace. Let's start off with the general layout. As a left-handed person, I started off by moving all of the menus to the right side of the screen, so that my left hand can draw freely. I also have the animation timeline pinned to the bottom of the screen so that I can easily access it while I'm animating. I am not the type of person to keep menus open at all times, and I need as much space as possible when I'm drawing on my iPad, so I personally keep most of these menu columns closed or minimized wherever possible. Occasionally, I will keep certain things open, like these hotkeys on the side of the screen, since I tend to use them to quickly switch between brush tools and eraser tools. To pin these hotkeys, I simply swipe in from one side of the screen, and then they appear. It sometimes takes me a couple of tries because I might accidentally move a slide over window onto the screen instead. For this next section, you can customize your windows however you want, but this is just how mine is set up. If you're missing any of these panels, just go to the window menu and turn on the panel that you need. The first column contains all of my main brush tools, erasers, and other things that I use, such as the eyedropper, ruler tool, or object move tool. Because I nested a bunch of these tools into their own subfolders, these will usually be set to whatever the last tool I was using was. The second column typically has the following two sections: the layer panel and the animation cells panel for the light table. Since I do a lot of anime-style animations, I tend to not deal with too many layers on a drawing, so I can dedicate half the column for layers and the other half for the light table. This light table allows me to essentially take another frame and place it on top of my current layer and use it like a guide or tracing reference when animating. This allows my drawings to stay consistent between frames. This simulates actual Japanese animators when they are animating traditionally, where they can have a physical light table and use different drawings stacked on top of each other to trace over and stay consistent. The third column is split into multiple nested sections. The top section contains my auto actions, color wheel, navigator, and subview. I often flip between these windows depending on what stage of the animation I'm at. The second section contains the sub-tool window. Depending on what is selected in column 1, these windows change to show the tools that I've saved under each icon. Admittedly, I don't typically have to select anything in here since I already have some of these tools pinned in the upper command bar. More on that later. And the bottom section is the tool property window. Sometimes I like to play around with the tool settings, so having them set right next to the subtools just makes sense to me. I can switch tools here and then the settings appear here too, and I can just change things like brush size or stabilization or anti-aliasing. And yes, before you comment, I am one of those monsters that uses the line art with 100% stabilization. It's just what I'm used to. And lastly, we have my rarely used column. This contains all of the materials and assets that I've downloaded and collected over the years. Honestly, I only ever venture in here if I need to look up a 3D model or a pose that I've saved somewhere, and then I just minimize it again. Fun fact for those that didn't know, there are 2 levels of minimizing a column in Clip Studio Paint. There's this single arrow minimize, which leaves the icons visible, and then there's the double arrow, which folds it down into just a line. Occasionally, I will full minimize columns just to give myself a tiny bit more room on the screen, but that just depends on my mood. Next is the thing that probably confuses my commenters the most, the command bar. Outside of my animation timeline, I probably use the command bar the most on my workspace. This is the thing that I copied directly from Will's anime workspace, is pinning certain colors, tools, and functions to the top of my workspace. You can pin color palettes, frequently used tools, and even auto actions and menu functions apparently. In order to pin tools and icons to the command bar, all you have to do is click on the Clip Studio menu button on the top left, choose command bar settings, and you can pick anything to pin here, including tools, options, menu commands, auto actions, and yes, even drawing colors. If you choose that option, you'll be given a color wheel and you can pin any color you want. Do keep in mind that space is limited even if you're on your main desktop version of CSP, so I highly recommend experimenting with what tools and functions you need access to at all times. In my example here, I have several columns popped open, so I only have access to this much room on the command bar. Once I minimize them, I can get access to more of my tools. This is another reason why I minimize these columns so much. To answer the question of why these specific colors, I actually made an entirely separate video about the reason why anime studios use red, blue, and green and other colors when creating anime. You can find it linked below or at the end of the video. I'll leave this graphic up on the screen if you want to screenshot this and use it for yourself. Credit to Tonari Animation for creating this. The tools and auto actions that I use are specifically custom made by a channel called NikaCH. They produced a lot of tutorials on how to make Japanese anime-style animations using Clip Studio Paint, and they've actually shared out their specific brush set and auto action set for other people to use. The main ones that I use are the following. This anime line art brush, which is exactly what it sounds like. This anime paint bucket tool, specifically made to fill in colors with these pixeled aliased lines. This replicates using Redis Paintman in Japanese anime studios. This anime paint fill brush, which can be used to paint over an enclosed area and fill it with color. This is very useful for filling in stray gaps or pixels. I use this line curve tool in conjunction with the line art brush in order to help me stay consistent with certain curves like in the hair or the face. And then here's a funky one that not a lot of people know about, Color Replace Bucket. So like the name suggests, it replaces the color that you tap on the canvas with the color you have in the first color slot down here. As for their auto actions, that would require an entirely separate video to break down every single one that I use, but the one that I use the most is this auto action to automatically separate the colored lines from the black line art layer and create a folder structure all ready to start coloring your anime keyframes. Let's say that I have an animator on my team that submits this keyframe. This was all done on one layer, just like how anime studios draw on single sheets of paper. This auto action will automatically split the colored lines from the black line art, place the layers into this folder, and arrange it from top to bottom, line art, flat colors, and colored lines. And occasionally I will have it set so that it actually color codes the different layers. Makes it much easier to see. Then all you would need to do is have your flat color layer selected, set your paint bucket to refer to the folder, and now when you use the paint bucket to color, it will cover over the red and blue lines without issue. Maybe I'll make a separate video dedicated to breaking down Nika's auto actions so that others can use them for making anime too. And that's basically everything about how I structure my Clip Studio Paint workspace. And if you want the answer to why anime studios use these red, blue, or green lines when creating anime, check out this video here. Be sure to check out my latest animations. Thanks for visiting the Mind Palace, and I'll catch you all next time. Bye!